Welcome back to the AI with Maribel Lopez program. As always, I am excited to be out in the space talking to different people about how they're looking at AI. It's a really dynamic landscape. And today I'm joined by Daniel Ziv. He is the Global VP of AI and Analytics for Product Management and Go-to-Market Strategy at Verint. I'm really excited to be here with Daniel. We've met in person several times, and it's always nice to be able to have known somebody in person and then to interview them. So Daniel, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Maribel. Pleasure to be here. Appreciate it.
So there's a lot going on in AI, and in some ways, I feel like everything we're doing is an evolution of something that we've discussed before. So I wanted to get your take, particularly given that you're looking at AI and analytics and that intersection about what's going on there. Analytics isn't new. So what's driving the change in analytics today compared to where it was, I would have said 5 to 10 years ago, but let's even call it several years at this point because things are moving so fast that anything beyond that seems like ancient history.
I think that is the first point, is the speed of change that we're seeing around us is just phenomenal. So there's always change. Change is the only constant, but it wasn't at this rate. We're geopolitical changes, regulation changes, weather changes, and this is not just news. This is impacting our business. It's impacting our consumers, our customers that are calling us. It's impacting the agents that need to respond to it. It's impacting strategies and pricing. And so the pace of change impacts the need for much, much faster insights. So we need to have, what we're working on is providing analytics at the level that could provide either real-time or near real-time insights. And that's one thing that we're working on with our customers. And the other thing is just the technological change. One of the key changes in the last few years is the emergence and more mature capabilities around large language models, generative AI, agentic AI, which we can take advantage of, especially in the area of unstructured data that we've been doing this for 2 decades, but the kind of depth of insights, speed of insights, leveraging these new models and capabilities is outstanding. I'm like every day amazed by how much more we can do. And those are the two key factors is, much better technology that's much more mature, much more accurate, much faster, much more cost effective even, and the need for much, much faster insights. I think those are I would say the two key things that I see in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that because we have been talking about this for a while. We've always been talking about creating agile organizations, but we're really limited by the technology beforehand. And I think we've seen such a tremendous evolution in, say, the past 2.5 years at this point. And I know some of the discussions you and I have had about the changes in analytics, you kind of tee up these two ways of thinking about it. One is like the macro versus and I thought that was a really interesting framework to think about it. And I was wondering if you could explain what those mean and why organizations need both.
Yeah, I like to look at it that way, maybe because there's macroeconomics and microeconomics. Like
Right.
it really, people tend to confuse the
He's
two.
getting professorial on us here.
But the first thing you need is to understand at a scale, across all your interactions, all your surveys, all the data you have, your performance data, what's happening right now that's different than an hour ago or yesterday or even last year at this time, whatever your reference. But you need that macro view, the insights of, I was on a call this morning with a customer and, one of the top issues they asked about is tariffs. That's kind of a timely thing. Some businesses it affects more than others, but for some it directly affects. They're getting 3 times calls about tariffs today than they did just a while back, and those calls are twice as long and they're more confusing because there's not always a clear answer because sometimes we don't even know what the right answer is yet. But we need to understand what the calls are about, what the interactions are about, how we're responding it, what is a better response. That's the macro view. You need a system that can look scalably at the entire volume of stuff and give you a statistically valid sample across that trend. Then there's the micro. Okay, what do we do with all this? This is great insight, but how do I operationalize it at the interaction? Now there's another caller coming in right now in real time with the same topic. I know what the right answer is from my macro analysis, but I need to infuse that insight and analyze the call as it's happening, provide real-time guidance, or apply this information to my website or to my IVA or IVR saying, hey, we know you're calling about this, here's the right answer, and being able to take the macro insights and drive them into micro interactions at the interaction level at the right time. That's a different type of analytics, requires slightly different technology, and both are critical. And most importantly, if you have a system or platform that can combine and leverage, do the macro analysis at high speed, at high accuracy, and shift that into micro workflows and provide that micro analytics at the interaction level, that's kind of the win. That's how you get ahead significantly. And some companies do a very good job at understanding the macro view. They just don't operationalize it quickly enough. Some do a great job at micro analytics, but they're doing it based on last year's insights, right? So it's may not, what they're guiding their agents or their coaching may not be relevant anymore, may not be the best practice. And companies that do both have a real advantage.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that breaking them up that way talks about the different styles of data that you might be looking at. I know that you and I have also had some discussions in the past of, some of the flawed decision-making patterns that we're seeing with organizations. Can you give us a couple of examples of things that you think organizations get wrong when they're thinking about analytics?
Yeah, I think so. At the end of the day, analytics is about better decision making and better actions that are based on those decisions. So what I find is a lot of organizations tend to, and a lot of executives tend to be in this position either because they have been in this space for so long, they feel like their gut feeling is usually accurate, and that in many cases is right. But because changes are so happening so fast, that's less and less likely to be the best option. Even though and usually they make this decision not because they don't understand the value of data, the analytics is too slow. Let's say I got a spike of calls about something and I don't really have really good macro insights about what's driving it. So I'm going to guess. Sometimes I'll guess right, but more often than not, now the changes are happening, I'm going to guess wrong. But I'll use my gut feeling because I don't have the data. I have to make a decision. Not making a decision could be not an option. So I'm not waiting and I make non-data driven decisions, and that over time becomes more, more problematic. Even 50% of the time I'm wrong, that still could be very detrimental. The second type of flawed decision making is the ones that do acknowledge, look, I can't make this decision. I don't have the right data. I send my analytics team, go figure this out. And they say, well, we'll give you an answer next week or next month because we have to run the reports and run this. And that's historically how analytics ran is, yeah, I'll give you a project, come back in 3 weeks and tell me what or hire a consulting company, do this analysis for the market. And 6 months from now, tell me what I need to make. That used to be okay when change was slow and everybody was slow. Now it's no longer relevant. So I'm waiting because I want to make the right decision and I'm acknowledging that I need the data, but I'm making the decision too late. By the time I make the decision, I've missed the opportunity. I've lost so much money. I've gone behind compared to the competition. So those are the two kind of flawed decision making that I see, either making the data decision without data and taking the wrong actions, or making decisions but too slowly. So I got the right data, but by the time I got it, I'm late.
The analysis paralysis for industry analysts like myself, you can imagine, is quite, do we have enough data? Can we actually make the call on that? Is that the right data? We spend way too much time sometimes, and sometimes it's just like, directionally, you're going that way. Like, let's do that. So I can really resonate with those different styles because I've seen and experienced both. Okay, so that was the downside, but let's talk about some of the upside. Maybe you could share some examples of the type of results you see that companies can achieve when they're using both these micro and macro.
Yeah. So the good news is, we can solve those two types of issues. If I give you the right data scalably, both on the macro level and also help you operationalize it, then you don't have to make those flawed decisions. You can make smart decisions based on real data that's happening, current data, and operationalize and take action immediately. And companies that, our customers that have deployed our latest CX automation platform with capabilities like the Genie bot or our coaching bot are doing that. We have one example that I recently saw from a large telecom, international telecom, that has both the macro view and the actually micro real-time coaching capability, saved $80 million and increased their sales by like 11%. These are, we're talking about multi-million dollars impacts. And this is a large organization, but even smaller organizations, we typically, when we deploy our latest Genie bot that does this Gen AI analysis, both the macro and then apply the micro stuff, we see within days, within 1 or 2 days, we typically find $5 to $10 million of insights just off the bat, kind of low-hanging fruit. What's happening today? But like I said, I was on a call this morning with a customer on this tariff issue, and they estimated they can improve sales by like $3 million and reduce costs by another $2.5 million. Like, And this is done in hours. No longer a long. Typically, we would find this in the past, but it would take us weeks or at least days at best case scenario. Now we can do it in hours. So the impact is real, it's immediate. And again, we can operationalize. It's not just the insights are valuable, we can take action on those insights immediately.
One of the things I think is really interesting about what you're talking about is we spend a lot of time working on strategy with organizations, and strategy can be about fully reimagining a customer experience, as an example. But there's so many stages and steps that are on the way in between where you can leverage AI, you can see real return on investment, you can actually fund the new initiatives that you want to do. So I think where we've moved as an industry and a marketplace in the past year and a half is really thinking much more towards these directed outcomes where you say, okay, what's the value I'm getting out of the AI? And it is taking something that you were doing before and making it better, but in some cases it's finding, completely new ways to do things or completely new sources of savings or revenue. So both of those are relevant if you can scope it the right way. And what I love about where we are now is like, you don't necessarily have to get to the end of a full everywhere in the organization we've got AI enabled before you can see any value, right? There's steps along the way, which is great.
That's really our approach is people are, there is this thing, okay, we need to figure this out. We haven't encountered this kind of technology. We don't know what to do. So let's, again, do a research project, evaluate all the LLMs, talk about all the vendors, issue an RFI, then issue an RFP, then go through procurement. And then next year, or 2 years from now, we'll figure it out. That's no longer an option. We don't have that time. Our approach is, hey, what you have, if it's working, great. Now, what can you turn on without changing anything that will add value to your environment? Like, think of your phone. I can download an app and turn on capability that now is transformative. That's the kind of speed we're trying to work with. What we mean by an open platform is it's not a big decision. It's, hey, I have agents handling calls and then typing wrap-up notes. I can automate that today and get immediate value. Now I've quantified that. Now I can take the next thing. Now I need to coach our agents on, I've done analytics. I have the macro view. I run Genie. Now I want to turn on real-time coaching. And you can do it on a small subset. If you don't, we've had a customer who ran our wrap-up bot on 300 agents, saw the immediate impact, turned it on 100-fold to 30,000 agents. So it allows you to reduce the risk. If it didn't work, 300 agents, so maybe you wasted a week.
Turn it off.
Turn it off. So the risk is low, the decision's faster, you don't have to go through a big approval, you don't have to change. Or we have a lot of customers still on-prem. They have telephony on-prem, and that's fine. Of course, all the innovation's happening in the cloud, but that doesn't mean you have to move everything you have in the cloud. You can leverage cloud services from your existing home without changing all the plumbing and moving, to a new home. That's the idea. Of course, moving to a new home is great, but not everybody can afford it or has the time to do it. But I want all this AI innovation with my current home. And that's our approach, allowing executives to take faster decisions, get AI outcomes now. And over time, they're also getting exposed to the power of this technology, because that, I think, is the biggest risk, is inaction, because I'm not sure what to do and I don't want to make a wrong decision. And the reality is that some companies are doing it, and those companies are going to create the new bar. And if you're not doing it, you're already falling behind. If you don't do anything, every day you're moving behind. You're losing ground to your competitors. You're losing ground to customers that are expecting higher CX. So there's a real risk of inaction.
And I think we always talked about that, but people are actually seeing it now with some of their competitors doing interesting things faster and getting some value out of it. It might not be fully transforming the industry, but they're certainly getting value out of it. So I think everybody's hyper aware to that. But with all this comes lots of words, right? So we've seen the rise of generative AI. We're talking about agentic AI. At Verint, you guys talk a lot about CX automation. Could you maybe give us some concepts of, how do you see all these things coming together or working together? Or how do you talk to clients about, it's not alphabet soup because we haven't fully I made them acronyms. We haven't fully made them acronyms, but it's still a lot of different things to think about, right?
Let me start with CX automation, because that's what Verint does, and let me explain that. So CX automation is the idea that CX expectations are on the rise, and AI is going to make them even go higher. And to meet those, a lot of companies compete on CX. It's becoming a C-level KPI. What's our CX, whether you're using CSAT or NPS, or whatever metric you're using to measure that. And to keep up that pace, to keep delivering to the expectations of customers, you can hire a lot of people and try to, have more staff and less weight and all that, but that doesn't scale. That eventually costs money, and businesses that are for profit need to make justify that. So the only way to meet that expectation is by automating that. AI came at a perfect time, or especially Gen AI, to help automate a lot of these micro processes. So the goal of CX automation is to deliver higher CX at a lower cost and to generate better outcomes, including higher revenue, which is what businesses are about. And many businesses, this is their core competitive metric. And that's what Verint does. And it's not one thing. We have over 50 different solutions and bots, and they work in concert in an open platform. And you don't have to have all of those to improve your CX. So that's what Verint does, and that's what CX automation means. Now let's talk about the tech stuff, the Agentic AI and Generative AI and AI in general. So AI, again, like analytics, is not new. There have been AI capabilities for many decades. What is relatively new is this idea of generative AI, which, again, everybody's heard about it. The idea is that AI can generate content, can understand unstructured conversations, including voice and text and video and images, and respond to it. That's the idea of generative AI. And people confuse that a little bit with agentic AI, which is relatively newer, which means, so generative AI is really cool, very powerful, and we've all experienced it by talking or asking ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever you're using, Meta. But it typically is driven by a prompt. I'm asking a question, it gives me an answer. Right? So it's more reactive, it's more specific to that. Sometimes it might have context if I have multiple questions. Agentic AI is not a whole new technology. It takes that into the next level. It says, okay, if I can ask one question, another question, another question, and then I have to do stuff. Agentic says I can ask multiple questions. I can set a goal and say, hey, I want to increase revenue for my business. Go figure this out. And it'll itself generate questions, go to the web, go to my database, go to different places, come up with answers, ask follow-up questions, and even maybe take actions like set an alert, change the price, and basically do the whole project, the entire end-to-end workflow. And it's a continuous scale. And the next level is super intelligence, where we have something that asks questions, thinks, generates strategies, and takes actions. By adding complicated tasks that would typically have to be broken down, it reduces the human involvement. Human is still, I think, going to involve even with agentic AI and even with super intelligence if we control it. But it's just a continuation of a spectrum. They're not different technologies. It's a continuation of getting more and more advanced, more action oriented, more reasoning, more parallel processing into tasks to reduce the mundane or the time-consuming tasks that typically a human does. So it's exciting. There's different definitions of what people see it, but it is evolving. We're not done with Gen AI. This is just the beginning, and there's a lot more and exciting stuff, and sometimes it's even scary, but we can't stop it. So, there's no point of stopping something you can't, being scared of something you can't stop. It's more about how do we ride the dragon. It is a dragon, a big dragon, but we want to ride it. We don't want to be blown away by it.
I really feel now that I need to go into a multimodal model and have a ride the dragon image created for the generative AI. That's fabulous. I love it. Okay, but how do I think about something? So there's a lot of discussion about autonomous systems and the like. How do I think about agentic AI within something like the?
Yeah, so let me give you a simple example of our first version of GenieBot was mostly generative in the sense that I would ask a question. It was super cool. It would analyze my calls about complaints or churn and give me insights about that. And it was very powerful. We immediately, within a few months, within 3 months, we came up with our next version, which is agentic in the sense that it'll take a question, break it down, allow also to increase what we call the context window. So I want a larger sample, so you double the sample. I can ask this question many, many times and quantify the results. Because what we found is even with the great insights of Genie, somebody had to quantify, okay, I have 5 key reasons for churn, but I want to quantify which one is the most important. How can I take action on that? So we took it to the next level by automating the next step. And even the next step is, okay, I got the insights, I quantified them, now I need to present it to my executive team. I'm going to export this to PowerPoint. We automate that too. So we're getting closer to, it's more agentic in the sense that it does take more action. It does do multiple tasks. There's about 200 agents working in parallel rather than one. And that is, and we continue. I mean, that's not the end of the road. That's the path that we're in. This is one example of how generative is moving into agentic and going beyond.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense because I think one of the issues that, when you talk to customers, it's like, well, first they talked to a vendor and it was generative and now it's agentic and they're trying to figure out, well, how does that evolution that you talk about happen? Like, give me an example. So that's a good example for helping people frame like what that evolved into. One of the other questions that we get a lot is some people are on-prem, some people are on cloud. Can you use AI if you're on-prem? How do you transition to the cloud if you need to transition to the cloud? When you talk to customers, what do you tell them in relation to, on-prem, cloud, AI? What's your advice for them?
So I think long term, a lot of customers will eventually migrate to the cloud. Some customers, just because where they are now are on-prem, our approach, I think, which is unique, is saying, look, yes, you need to leverage services from the cloud simply from the compute power. The cost is prohibitive. Some of these models don't even built to be deployed on-prem. But the big difference is you don't have to move your entire infrastructure, especially in the CX, like a CCaaS solution that, a lot of them are cloud only. So a lot of vendors says, yeah, you want all this great innovation? Cool. Move all your telephony, move all your recording, move everything to the cloud, and then we can turn on all these cool features. But what happens is that 90% of the time and the effort is focused on moving infrastructure, and 10 to 0% is about outcomes, right? So you're getting a lot less value, and the project is much more complex, much more risk. Because what if you mess up? What if the telephony stops working? And there's a lot of risk, a lot of cost, a lot of time, and relatively little value or delayed value. Our approach is the opposite, is saying don't touch, don't move anything, and turn on AI. We created this hybrid approach where you can record, you can have telephony on-prem, and we send in a very secure way, leverage cloud services with your existing deployment. You get immediate outcomes with very little cost, very little effort, very little risk, and that funds the next innovation and the next innovation and the next innovation, and you get exposed to using and getting value out of AI, Gen AI, Agentic AI now, which keeps you current. If you don't do it, we know you're going to lose. If you do it now, you have a chance of becoming the winner because maybe your competitors are slow and they're still moving their infrastructure.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my industry analyst friends, Bob O'Donnell, he talks a lot about this concept of hybrid AI. And, the reality of the situation is if we look at the customer base for security or regulatory reasons or other issues, they have mixed environments. So we still have to be able to support AI in whatever environment you as an organization choose. And those can be complicated, but they're not in a position where they can't be done. You just have to look for the right set of technologies to do that. So I want to ask you two more questions. One is about Verint specifically. What do you think people misunderstand about Verint today? Or what would you like them to know that you think they might
Yeah.
not know either?
First of all, thanks for the question because I do think there is some because Verint has been around for almost 3 decades now. I think we need we have a strong legacy with a very strong customer base that know us for what we were known for the best recording solutions, the best speech analytics solution, market leading workforce management and quality monitoring, and we're still really good at that, and we're still market leading in all those areas, but our platform is much broader, so people don't know. I was just at a meeting last week with a customer that use our solution, those specific solutions I mentioned, they all have them, they think it's great. They didn't know that we are a leader in knowledge management. They didn't know that we have a market-leading IVA and IVR system. They didn't know that we support the entire enterprise with back office and branch. Like they have a lot of branches. Like a lot of customers just don't know. And it's our fault to some extent that we need to educate the customers. And so their perception is that we're really good at a handful of things, especially in the WFO, workforce management, quality monitoring, speech analytics. But we've grown significantly both through organic growth and organic innovation and through many acquisitions. We're a much broader organization. I think that's one misconception is just, expose yourself, go to the Verint website, come to Verint Engage in September. You'll see all these amazing other things and talk to other customers that are using Verint for other use cases. The second misconception is, again, a lot of our customer base is on-prem. So they think, that we're sort of an on-prem solution. We're a cloud-based platform that supports hybrid deployments on-prem. So we are a cloud
Interesting.
platform, cloud-ready, cloud-first. The data hub has all this innovation that's coming from the cloud, but our uniqueness is we don't force you to change your infrastructure. Whatever you have on prem still works with all this amazing cloud platform. And some people don't realize that we're really a cloud first, that we can help them to that journey in the cloud in a much more cost effective, faster way than moving to a cloud, company that was born in the cloud. That does require you to move everything to the cloud. So, there's advantages of being born in the cloud, but there's also being advantages of not being born there because we can support on-prem and we can do it now faster at a lower cost.
I think that's the first time I've heard somebody talk about the advantages of not being born on the cloud. I love that. That makes me
Right. We're
that
totally cloud today, but we weren't necessarily born there. So that's
yeah.
a real advantage that people I think some people don't fully grasp that.
If you look at a lot of the software companies that are really critical to running organizations' business, a lot of them have been in existence for a while and have had to make this migration. So there's a couple things I love about that because one of the things that you brought up, I think, is a critical challenge for the marketplace. Technology is moving really fast. So even if they looked at a company last week, let's say a couple weeks ago, there's a good chance that there was a conference and that they announced something new that was, really meaningful. So I think it requires us to be much more thoughtful about how frequently we're evaluating things because things that you might not have been able to do 6 months ago, you can do today. And 3 months from now, you'll be able to do something completely different. Like I'm just watching how fast the rise of agentic AI has happened, really, within roughly a year to a year and a half's time from when you would see major announcements. Obviously, things have been being built for a while, but the pace of the major announcements and the maturing of the stack has been quite impressive to watch. And that's, if we go back and it's only been 2.5, not even quite 3 years since we started talking about generative AI. So I love where we're going, but I think it really requires us to be much more diligent about evaluating what's going on. So that's my thought on, what executives should know about making AI and analytics decisions today. Do you have something you'd like to share with organizations about what they should know about making AI and analytics decisions in today's environment?
First, I think it's super strategic decision. If you think about the biggest companies in the world, they're they are data companies that have better analytics, whether it's Amazon or Google or that's the advantage today. And to take advantage of AI is not about which model you use, is do I have data and can I operationalize this data, get better decisions, operationalize those issues and automate some of those actions. So I think it's really strategic. And second, I think time is of the essence. We don't have time to spend a year or two and saying, yes, we have a project. Like you have to be very nimble, very fast, get AI outcomes now, leverage all your unique data. Your competitive advantage is the data that you have that maybe your competitors don't have, or more importantly, how well are you using the data that you have access to? Many organizations have lots of data, most of them fully utilizing it. And now with Gen AI, Agentic AI, taking advantage of that data, even unstructured data that was much harder to mine and leverage, is this. So people who put that data to work and take advantage of it are going to excel, and AI is going to ride the dragon. Others are going to get burned by the fire of the dragon. It's literally that illustrative. So I think I'm so excited to be in this space at this time because this is not just another year in analytics. This is pivotal. This year and last year and next year, these are make or break years, and down to minutes. And every minute where you're not taking advantage, learning and embedding this, again, it's either a great opportunity or a huge risk. And that's why some are scared to death, and some are excited beyond means. Like it's really that's the reality. It's either you're going to be so much better and more successful, even on a personal basis. I feel like every day I feel like I need to learn another AI capability that I can leverage. I'll do a plug. I use now, I don't know if you know the Plod, this little recorder, because we're recording. So I can record, for example, this conversation and immediately get a summary and action items and this. It even can translate, so I can have a conversation in a different language and get the summary in English if I want to. And everybody knows the technology is here. The question is who's using it and who's not. And when you start using it, it start realizing, hey, I could do this. I could write a whole essay while I'm driving. It changed. It suddenly you become so much more productive. You realize, wow, this is really helping, and then your outlook on AI changes because you realize, yes, there is some risk and some danger, but the positive is so great that it'll outshine the potential risk. And yes, we will figure things out. Some things will go wrong, and we'll fix them. But if we don't experience them, we won't know how to fix them when we finally adopt it. We'll be less prepared. I think that's the main message: is that it's exciting times if you grab the bull by the horns and try something out, turn it on, make it the easiest decision you're going to make, If you're a very customer, we can turn things on for you. You can pick and choose whatever has the biggest impact for you now. And that's an important learning experience. And, it's exciting, but we have to take action. Inaction, again, is the biggest risk.
About a year ago, somebody actually said to me the best way to track and understand AI is to use AI. And, that was very intimidating to me. But, you use it within the context of your field, right? And you find the tools that are in your field. And it really gives you a sense of understanding of, hey, what could we do 3 months ago? What can we do now? You start to think about how your job and role can change. So I think that's fabulous advice, Daniel. Any closing thoughts for the audience?
The only thing is, if you're not sure and you want to have this kind of conversation, we'd love to have that conversation. I love to connect with people, whether it's on LinkedIn or through, if you're a Verint customer, you have your contact. We'd love to basically understand what you want to achieve. If you had this magic wand called AI, what would you want to do? We probably can do that, at least to some extent right now. That's kind of the thing. You have the magic wand. That's what we call genie because it grants wishes. So just tell us what you want, and we can probably help you. So that would
So you've
be
got genies and dragons. I
yes,
really like where we're going. We have the makings of, a fantasy novel that could build and create interesting things.
yeah, yeah. It's exciting. It's the world of whether it's science fiction or fantasy. It's we're
We're
there.
here. We're making it happen.
Yeah.
Daniel, thank you for your time and attention. I
Thank you.
look
No
forward
problem.
to seeing how you move the product forward.
Excellent. Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot.